I'm really pleased to welcome several executives from Symantec. First off is Greg Clark, CEO. Amy Cappellanti-Wolf. Samir Kapuria. And Sheila Jordan.
Awesome. Hello. Awesome. Yes, I'm back. How's everyone doing? We're good? Yes. All right, great. We're going to jump right in. Greg.
Hey, Wayne, how are you?
Good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
We literally just met backstage. Yeah. And CEO of Symantec.
Honored to be here. Fantastic topic.
Great. Everyone, this should be fun. It's a different dialogue, but it should be fun dialogue. So let's talk about Symantec. Talk about you all experiences and like why are you all here and why this conversation on diversity and inclusion and cybersecurity is important to have today.
Yeah, no, I think it's absolutely a serious topic for us at Symantec. As you can see, we brought quite a few of our senior team with us. Symantec, a very large cyber defense firm, pure play cybersecurity firm, consumer and enterprise, a lot of responsibility in the world in the fight against cybercrime, whether it be nation states, election tampering, identity theft, normal criminals. So we have a serious mission in our company, and people join our company to really join in that fight in a civilian context. I think myself coming in as a CEO about 2.5 years ago, or it seems like just the other day, diversity and inclusion in the company was a major theme for us. And I really was disappointed in our metrics. I think inclusion is a culture statement, diversity is a measurement, and our measurements, as Amy and I collaborate on all the time, are just not good enough. And I believe that a diverse company is way more competitive than a company that is not. And we also operate in many countries, more than 30 countries around the world. And the topic for us is a global topic, not just isolated to the issues here in the United States. So this is, I think, an important conversation for us and something that we have bought into across the globe.
Awesome.
Well, as the head of HR, I mean, the whole notion about inclusion really lends itself to having a more diverse workplace. And so a lot of our commitment has been around how do people being their best selves to work every day? Because the notion of you have a separate work life and a home life has really become blurred because you work quite a bit and what you bring to home is what you bring to work. And so how do we create a place where people have a voice, where they're listened to, where they are a part of a bigger community and not in the margins? And so a lot of our work are having those conversations around how do you bring people into the conversation, and ultimately it's just good business. I mean, I never have to rationalize why sitting across the table from 4 white guys is not a good idea versus sitting across the table from a diverse group of people. So what we're trying to do in the company is bring those voices in so we can have better business results and also have people who want to stay and thrive. So it's a big part of our fabric culturally as well as part of our business operating cadences.
So if we think about the cyber landscape, cyber criminals don't discriminate. They attack everyone from various socioeconomic backgrounds, various races, various countries, various generations. And so as we look at who are victim of these attacks, our solutions and the models that we employ to stay ahead of those adversaries needs to also be inclusive of all walks of life. And so part of our thesis is we sit in the intersection between cyber safety and cyber criminals, and the power and energy we get comes from a diverse group of people.
Yeah, so what I like to add is, so in addition to being the CIO, what I really am most excited about is I'm also the executive sponsor for our SWAN initiative, our Semantic Women's Action Network. And I'm really excited about that because I believe in the philosophy and the metrics and everything that we're trying to solve for, but I also really believe that you got to take some action and really make it real inside the company. So we have a virtual global team, 13 sites. We connect on a monthly basis. We have lots of membership inside the organization, and I firmly believe that this voice that we can give to, in this case, gender, but we have lots of employee resource groups, that we allow that voice, and we're creating that environment, and we're hearing from, again, globally across the globe. The other thing I'd share with you that I think is really important too is we're really, really significant. There's a significant shortage in cybersecurity roles in jobs, and so we got to get super creative on how we're going to fill those. And so I look at the internship program, and I'm happy to report, although not fantastic, but this year's internship program, whether in the United States or in Pune, where we have a large office, was over 50% women. And so we have a philosophy that is recruit once, hire twice. So feeding that pipeline is super important.
That's great. That's great. And Greg, you touched on earlier in terms of when you came in 2 years ago, how things were. Now you're working to change it. Can you talk about a little bit, and you mentioned Swan, can we talk a little bit more about some of the initiatives, some of the programs you are doing or have done, or either how you have addressed some concerns over the years or and making progress at the company? How are you making progress?
I would say, for the folks in the crowd, don't underestimate how difficult it is to get a company who is 35 years old that has measurements like 20-something% diverse to be where it should be, right? That is a huge undertaking. And when you're a multinational like us and you're dealing with even things like pay equality, dealing with that in the Middle East, dealing with that in Japan, dealing with that in countries where there's huge gaps in these areas. These are things where you have to have some serious resolve, and we report our programs to our board every quarter. It's a formal process on how we're actually trying to move things. But if you just look at turnover, let's just take turnover for a second, and you say, okay, we're industry best, we've got low single-digit turnover or high single-digit turnover. If you are able to remove the bias and to bring the candidacy to that replenishment of that workforce, you have a chance to move the needle over a number of years to get it right. So as long as we're doing that, measuring that, and on a track to improve it, but it will take a number of years before that gets to a place that I would consider respectable externally. And then when you come to the top of the pyramid, where the VPs and above live, that's where it's really difficult when you're as old as we are, because you have a lot of ascendancy, a lot of folks looking for that promotion. And when you don't have a diverse pyramid, and you've got succession planning processes up to the top, it becomes extremely difficult to move the needle there, and that's where you have to have real support from the management team and the population to do that. And I would like to commend our team, Amy, and our board of directors, that this is a serious thing for us. But it's not just something that you can sprinkle some magic from the top on it and it's changed. It is a huge effort. Anyway, long story, but I think it can be helpful to you. If you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a new company, get it right from the start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's hard to fix when
don't
you've got
wait.
13,000 employees in 35 countries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Initiatives or things that you have done previously to help, not say correct, but help get it right now or address some issues now.
Yeah, I would say there's a couple of things we're doing. So first of all, I think everyone's suffering from this. It doesn't make it okay, but we're all trying to find what are the right things to go after. And you can be incredibly activity-based and feel good about it, but get no results. So we're trying to be really thoughtful about how we approach it. So it's everything from how do we build awareness, which is having us out here talking, and also us talking to our teams about how do they feel included and what are some things we can do to get them a bigger voice in the company. Greg recently signed up for the CEO Action Campaign with PwC, which is top CEOs across the country committing to diversity in their workplace. And that was a huge thing because it's held us to a whole different accountability, not just internally, but externally. We're looking at ways of taking bias out of the system. How do you have diverse interview slates? How do you have diverse panels? How do you gender neutralize job descriptions, which sometimes are so slanted one way, you're not attracting the right workforce? How do you kind of open up your amateur related to pipeline? We always want to kind of hire in our image. And back to Sheila's point, we have a gap in talent. So you have to be really thoughtful about, perhaps I think 70% of the capability we met by this person, because they have so much more they can learn and they have potential to go learn it. So how do we get a little more open around the type of people we go after? And then the last thing is, how do I build a better set of inclusive leadership? And that notion of servant leader. How do I get my leaders to bring people into the conversation? How do I have them make certain that they're listening to all the areas of opportunity? How do I make certain they're taking chances on people? They're being accessible. It's not that I'm going to open a door for you to get the job, but I'm at least get you into the conversation, then it's up to you to get that job. How do we have more of that capability in the organization? So we're taking three to four different approaches that are deep and systemic, as opposed to putting a bunch of posters, which we've done, and they look great, all over the workplace, really trying to make things that are C-level change and behavioral shifts. And back to Greg's point, it doesn't happen overnight, but if you pull the right levers, you can begin to see some real impact and change.
I want to jump on. Sometimes I like to go rogue on panels, so I hope everybody's okay.
It's okay, Wayne, let's do it.
And because this question about to ask is inspired by John this morning, who's the keynote I was doing earlier this morning, and it's talking about empathy. And I know the situation we're in terms of America and the world, and also know the situation we are in this room, where it's a panel of executives at a cybersecurity firm. We have white women, we have a white CEO, we have a I'm not sure, I don't want to misenunciate your ethnicity.
Indian.
Indian, thank you.
Yeah.
And often it can generate a lot of like separate emotions because people want representation all the time. They want to talk about intersectionality, they want to talk about allyship, they want to talk about privilege, want to talk about the past so much. I'm curious in terms of your levels of empathy. How have you grown to develop empathy around this conversation around diversity and inclusion in terms of like, you get it, and then how are you like telling your colleagues at work, this is why we're doing diversity and inclusion, because you get it, you develop empathy. Right. Yeah, I'm curious if you have thoughts on that. Yeah.
You know, I can start.
Yeah.
You know, but I feel that the topic is really, you know, for me, it's not just about the empathy part of it. I think, you know, that we are good citizens. Symantec has a very strong long-term social, you know, ethics reputation, has always been top 10, you know, for many years. But what I would like people to think about is we want the best people for the job. We want an environment that's safe. We want an environment that's inclusive. And we want the differentiation in thinking. Because ultimately, if we just went and hired people who were great cybersecurity executives, which we could go hire from everywhere else, but where we get the real disruption and where we get is really different thinking. And it can come from different cultures, and it can come from different experiences, it can come from different backgrounds. And where we don't have that, we are a weaker company and we will be less competitive. And so I want to remove the bias as the leader of the company, take it all the way out. And then I want the candidacy, and then I want to pick the very best person for the job. And in my experience, that is often a diverse candidate. And so I think that's really the way to think about it. You know, I was at a conference with Jamie Dimon one time, and he's not everybody's cup of tea. But he said something which I thought was very pro the diverse individual, which was, I don't care about diversity and inclusion. That's not the topic for me. I want to get the best candidacy, and I want to hire from the best person. It just so happens half of my direct reports are diverse. And I thought that was the thoughtful response. And anyway, my long answer.
Oh, that's cool.
Right?
That's good. Yeah.
So when thinking about the world we live in today, as a context, as looking at it from outside in, we're at a point where technology is doing so many things on our behalf. And so the question is no longer what can technology do for you, but what should it do for you? And that to me is where the empathy statement, the inclusion statement, having various points of views comes into play, because we're going to hit a moral ground of how one should employ technology. One example of this would be artificial intelligence. If it's all coded by the same cohort of people, it's going to mimic actions that that group represents. But now if you look at all of the different perspectives that need to be employed into getting that right, you need to have multi-generational, multi-gender, multi-race. You need all walks of life to be part of that to really be a reflection of what it's designed to do, which is help people.
Yes.
And can I just comment too on the point both Greg and Samir made around inclusion? So I have a different perspective than empathy, but more inclusion. We as leaders have a responsibility to make sure all voices are heard inside the company. So as leaders, if we see someone shutting someone down because of their thought or opinion, we have to call that behavior and call it out. We got to make sure it's not a big program. It's how we behave and act every single day. And I think as leaders, we have that responsibility. I know I'm heavily involved in women's initiatives, and women need to support women. Women need to support and help women. And when you see that that's not being done, we should call it out. So I think it's the responsibility of every employee to make sure that we're creating that environment and that behavior that doesn't allow for, certain things we don't want in the workplace.
Right. And I think if you walk it back in from the diverse candidate, the last thing you ever want was to be the diverse candidate that got hired because the numbers in that company were right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You want to be the diverse candidate that got hired because the company saw the value
Yes.
in
Yes.
me,
Yes.
nothing else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that I believe we owe that environment to the diverse candidacy. And if we don't stick to that, I would not like to be in a wide population as somebody who thought they came in because
obligatory
a
check,
metric
yeah.
wasn't right and something had to be shifted around. Right, I think that's a very important point as we work through this, through the long-term transformation that global multinationals and startup companies in the tech industry is going through. This is, I think it's something that we all have to really embrace. We want diversity for the value that it brings, not because it's a trendy movement. And then, Sheila made a very good point. The behaviors inside your company and the values that you have need to be inclusive. That is a culture statement. That is not a, you go take some training and you become inclusive. You have to, you have to believe in it. You have to understand the value in it, and you have to create a safe and fair workplace for that. And I think that our role as the technology industry is still dominant overseas. Many of our industries are not dominant overseas from the United States anymore. Tech still is. And the effect that we have on the international stage from big tech firms is a serious responsibility. And that means the Middle East, it means Japan, it means all the Asian countries, all the Latin American countries. And that's where I think we can really bring a change to how things get done.
Awesome, awesome. I'm curious, and again, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. What excites you right now around the work you're doing at Symantec? Not even connected to diversity and inclusion, kind of just what excites you right now? Like.
I'll tell you, I'll give you a good example. The other day we got an award from the FBI for having convicted, our evidence records convicted over 70 criminals. That is the stuff that fuels our organization. If you get on the call center at LifeLock and listen to the people who have had their identity stolen with debt collected at the door, it is a crisis. It's a serious emotional event. These people are destroyed. And what we do at our company is we bring some consequences and some order to that problem. And it's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why we show up a little harder than we would if we were making some platform technology somewhere.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah, I would say, one of the things that is so amazing about the company is the mission. People are here because they want to go after the bad guys. So that's not a hard thing to argue against. And I got to tell you, I was just telling Greg, I got hacked the other day with a food delivery service, of which I will not give you the name. But suddenly I was buying lots of alcohol in LA, which I don't buy my alcohol off of a delivery platform. But I was shocked, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I've gotten it. I was a Target customer. I got breached them, but it's so personal. I've got 2 teenage daughters who have devices. Our whole home is full of probably devices that I don't even know about, and it becomes super personal and super upsetting that you've been violated in terms of your personal information. And so for me personally, that's why I come to work every day, and the people we work with really care about this stuff. And back to Greg's point, we're doing things that matter, which makes it really easy to want to do this kind of work.
You know, and as nation-state related also, we're very important in the defense of, you know, Western democracies, countries. We also, if you've ever been to a crime scene where something like Equifax happened to a company, that is a serious, emotional, horrible problem for the executives that built that company or other companies. And I think, you know, once you sort of appreciate that on a personal level, it is a vocation. Cyber defense is more than a job.
Yeah, Samir?
Yeah, you know, I think it's being part of something greater than yourself. You're directly associated to enabling the future to come in cybersecurity, and that's exciting. You're directly influencing and helping people prevent becoming victims, and that's the emotional tie to it. So on one side, you're helping bring in tomorrow because you're allowing it to be safe to allow the new innovations to come in. On the other side, you're also helping people's lives day in and day out, and just to be part of something greater than yourself is a rare opportunity.
Yeah, that's good.
The other thing for the geeks in the room, you know, you can go work on moving data, making operating systems, building various applications. The good thing about cyber defense, every 3 years, it's a completely different set of details.
Yeah, that's true.
So the curiosity is always there.
That's cool.
Yeah, I would just like to say it's not often you can pick a company that you can impact every single individual in the world,
Wow.
whether it's a consumer or a business. And it's constantly changing. So, you know, we got to stay steps ahead of the bad guys. We got to be smart about it. So the dynamic nature of it is also very intriguing.
Awesome. Oh, wow. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank
I want to say
You
that.
excited?
I mean, yeah, I'm excited because, I have my own biases around, you know, cybersecurity and how it impacts the world, how it impacts everyone in the room, or even businesses, right? And how even it works with government. I just, you know, I think about that and it triggers a different set of emotions for me. And you all, you know, this is no plug, but you all helped me view that in a different perspective, right? In terms of, you know, if it's personal, like, you know, in terms of an app or or either it's innovative because I'm a person, I don't like doing the same thing over and over again. So like I want to keep learning. So yes, the industry constantly changes. So if I'm an engineer and I want to keep learning, I want to, you know, like cybersecurity. And then also in terms of I like making an impact, and then you want to work at a company, you want to make an impact, and there's different ways to make an impact. I do events, I do work with startups, I do different things. Or you make impact where I just want to code and help keep people safe. And that's a different way of making impact. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, it's cool.
Great questions.
Yeah, thanks.
And you know, definitely for, you know, the diversity and inclusion topic, you know, Symantec is a huge advocate. It's going to take us a number of years to fix our metrics, but we are working really hard on our culture and on the elements of this discussion that really help change our company, to empower our company to be better than the others and to be a safer place. And so that's why we invest in it. It's the right thing to do, as well as I think it's going to make us a much stronger company.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being
Thank
doing
you.
this.
Absolutely.